We just recently watched oversimplified Napoleonic Wars and you guys loved it. I loved it. You guys loved it so much that actually you're commenting Epic History TV Napoleonic Wars. You say it's even better than oversimplified. We're gonna put it to the test. Today we're going to watch Epic History TV Napoleonic Wars and it's gonna be lengthy, it's gonna be long, my friends. So get yourself a nice Estonian Youtuber cup with coffee. Ooh, that's Black Rifle Coffee Company. No, we can't get into it. We have Patreons. Of course, I'm not gonna forget the Patreons. You guys, I wouldn't forget about you guys. You're my number one. We have Ahmed. Helicopter, helicopter. You know that song from TikTok or something, whatever. That's what I get when I hear Ahmed. Thank you for becoming a Patreon. Shalom alaikum. We have Deja Chiara. My grandmother's name is Kira, and that is like Chiara. So thank you for your support, Mrs. Chiara. And finally we have Dominique Mahon, I don't know. In Estonia we would say Mahon. Thank you, Mr. Dominique, for supporting the channel. If you like my videos, then the link is in the description. Become a Patreon. And we still cannot start. I know you're itching to start the Napoleonic Wars, but ROHJE. We have ROHJE watches. ROHJE, yes, they're good watches. I wear them every day when I sleep, when I'm awake, when I go to the restroom, when I make food, when I go to the showers. I wear these ROHJE watches all the time because they're deliciously good looking. Look at these watches, man. I don't need any other watch in my life for the rest of my life. These ROHJE watches, all I need. Link in the description below. Go and get yourself a nice little Finnish-made ROHJE watch. Napoleonic Wars, finally, here we go.
In December 1804, in the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris, Napoleon Bonaparte crowned himself Emperor of the French.
It's already
Europe
good.
had never seen such a sudden and dramatic rise to power. A son of impoverished Corsican nobility to military dictator of France in little more than 10 years. Revolution and war had cleared Napoleon's path to the throne. War would dominate his 10-year reign. A conflict unprecedented in history that would leave millions dead and a continent in turmoil.
It was a world war before the First World War. And after the 30 years war, which was also kind of a world war, I would say. So it's like a second wannabe world war. Napoleon's masterpiece, Austerlitz, 1805.
8 months after Napoleon's coronation, the French Empire and its Spanish ally were at war with Britain, and Napoleon had assembled an army of 180,000 men along the Channel coast.
Nice!
But as long as the British Royal Navy ruled the seas, invasion was impossible.
Right, last time we talked about Napoleon going to Russia, 665,000 men, and I mentioned it's the biggest army mankind has ever seen. And you guys told me in the comments, which you always do, you correct me, that no, it isn't the biggest army. Chinese had this kind of an army like 1,500 years ago, 250 BC, they had this kind of an army, and Romans have these armies, and I don't know who else, Mongols or something. Well, I made a mistake. I thought Napoleon had the biggest army ever, but no.
But nor could Britain challenge France on land. And so British Prime Minister William Pitt tried to build a European coalition against Napoleon, using diplomacy and gold.
Nice.
Britain would prove Napoleon's most steadfast enemy, and its press delighted in relentless mockery of the French Emperor.
Right, we have the French Empire with Napoleon. They couldn't take the British. Then we have the German Third Reich, who couldn't take the British. And both of these empires couldn't take the Russia also. What can we learn from it?
Britain and France were old rivals in Europe and overseas. But now, Pitt feared Napoleon's conquests had made France too powerful. The French Emperor had to be defeated, and Europe's balance of power restored if there was ever to be lasting peace.
Lasting peace. Ooh.
Pitt found willing allies in Europe, among monarchs who despised Napoleon as a product of the French Revolution and a dangerous threat to the existing order. Austria harboured the deepest grievances, having seen her influence in Germany and Italy steadily eroded by French victories. The final straw came in May 1805, when Napoleon had also crowned himself King of Italy in Milan. Austria, Russia, Sweden and Naples joined Britain in an alliance known as the Third Coalition, and devised an ambitious plan for a series of joint offensives against France. The main
It looks good on a map. You have so many countries, the Third Coalition. We have so many powerful countries of Europe, the most powerful countries of Europe, aligned against one nation. It seems good on paper. Everything is, you're gonna win. The coalition is supposed to win. Look at this.
attack would be made by a combined Austro-Russian army, advancing across the Rhine into France. But Napoleon got word of their plans and reacted with typical speed and decision. He was determined to strike first, before the Allies could join forces, and ordered his army, now renamed La Grande Armée, to march to the River Rhine. His target was the Austrian army of General Mack, which had made a premature advance against Bavaria, a French ally, and was now dangerously isolated from the other Allied armies. Napoleon ordered Marshal Murat, his famously flamboyant cavalry commander, to make feint attacks through the Black Forest, while the rest of his army advanced.
Flamboyant cavalry commander. I would love to know, where did his flamboyancy come out? We heard the same thing said about him in the oversimplified videos. Famously flamboyant. Was he like Jack Sparrow? I am Marshal Joachim Murat. I am very you know, was he like that? Like the Jack Sparrow flamboyant? They keep saying this about him. I'm curious about this person.
Advancing at speed, enveloped Mack's army from the north. That summer, Napoleon's Grande Armée was at its most formidable. Well-trained, highly motivated, its regiments at full strength. What's more, it had been newly reorganized according to the corps system, later imitated by virtually every army in the world.
Yeah, we still have the corps system today. We have Marine Corps, which are made by Napoleon, as I learned.
Each corps, commanded by a marshal, was a mini-army of 15 to 30,000 soldiers.
Oh, okay.
With its own infantry,
not a company.
cavalry, artillery, and supporting arms, such as reconnaissance, engineers, and transport. This meant each corps could march and fight for a limited time independently, allowing Napoleon to break with the old doctrine of keeping his army concentrated. And
that is genius at the time. Somebody had to come up with it. And at some point this idea was brand new when somebody just came up, and that was Napoleon, just came up with this thing. Nowadays, yeah, every army is divided by corps, and every army has contingents in it that can fight separately from the main force. But back then, a super new idea. How? Dude is a genius.
Advance with his corps widely dispersed. This helped to disguise his real objective and increased movement speed, because the army could advance along multiple roads and live off the land, taking its supplies from scattered villages, rather than relying on slow-moving supply wagons. When the enemy's main force was located, the army could quickly concentrate for battle. This is how Napoleon's army was able to move at a speed that often surprised and disorientated his enemies. Mack didn't realize the danger he was in until it was too late. Napoleon's fast-moving corps crossed the Danube behind him and surrounded his army. Mack launched a series of poorly coordinated counterattacks, but despite some desperate fighting, the Austrians couldn't break out of the trap. Mack hoped that Kutuzov's Russian army could arrive in time to save him, but the Russians were still 160 miles away. And so, at Ulm, on the 19th of October, just 6 weeks into the war, Mack surrendered his army to Napoleon.
Entire army. I gotta say, on this painting, these Austrians, they have better looking uniforms with their white tops. I like them, but they're not good at war. I mean, Napoleon is just so much better, I guess.
Took nearly 60,000 Austrian prisoners.
Oh, damn!
Napoleon had struck his first devastating blow against the coalition.
How are you gonna manage that? 60,000 prisoners back then, back at the time. What are you gonna do with them? You need guards, you need a lot of men to actually feed them, a lot of baggage for them, logistics. What are you going to do with 60,000 prisoners at 1800, whatever it is?
Russian General Mikhail Kutuzov was an experienced and wary commander, more cautious than Mack. His army was exhausted after its 900-mile march from Russia.
Oh, 900.
But hearing of the Austrians' surrender at Ulm, and knowing he wasn't strong enough to face Napoleon alone, he immediately ordered a retreat. Napoleon pursued. The Russians fought several sharp rearguard actions, but could not save the Austrian capital, Vienna, which the French occupied on the 12th of November. Kutuzov slipped away to Olmütz in today's Czech Republic, where he was joined by reinforcements, as well as Emperor Alexander of Russia and Emperor Francis of Austria in person. Napoleon was furious that Kutuzov had escaped. By now his army was also exhausted and far from home, with winter approaching. He needed to force a decisive battle quickly.
Napoleon is a little bit like Japanese in the Second World War. I feel like they know they are doomed and facing up a greater enemy than themselves. They need to hit fast, first, and hard and effective to knock the enemy out. But Pearl Harbor was supposed to be that hit, and then Midway was supposed to be that hit. It didn't happen for the Japanese, and for Napoleon, well, it happened for a little bit. But in the long run, it's always going to be a war of attrition. And we saw it in the end also. First 5 Napoleonic wars, they were fast and effective. But you cannot fight like that forever. Conflicts seem to drag on for a long time. And then you cannot be that fast dude. You got to just outlast your enemy. That's how much I understand about warfare.
Fortunately for him, the overconfident 27-year-old Russian emperor sought the glory of battle, overriding the concerns of his veteran commander, General Kutuzov.
Ooh.
With the Allied army closing in, Napoleon ordered his corps to rapidly concentrate on a battlefield he had carefully selected, near the town of Austerlitz. Napoleon oversaw the dispositions of his army late into the night, then grabbed a few hours' sleep beside a campfire. Dawn would mark the first anniversary of his coronation as emperor, and promised a battle that would make or break his young empire. The morning of the 2nd of December 1805 was cold and bright with a heavy mist. Two armies.
Can you hear that? That's a fighter plane. NATO fighters, yeah boy, that's what we have in Estonia. I don't know if you heard that, but a fighter just flew by, very far away, of course.
Of near equal size, faced each other across a 7-mile-wide battlefield. But the Allies held the high ground of the Pratzen Heights, while French Third Corps under Marshal Davout was still marching to the battlefield. Seeing Napoleon's thinly stretched right flank, the Allies planned a large-scale attack from the Pratzen Heights to steamroller the French right, before swinging round to envelop Napoleon's army.
Great plan!
Little did they know, Napoleon was counting on his weak right wing luring the Allies into just such a move. Whereupon
he's just one step ahead all the time. Damn! I would love to know what coffee he drinks to be able to be such a genius.
He would launch his own attack on the Pratzen Heights to cut the Allied army in half. His bold plan relied on his correct prediction of Allied movements, the speedy arrival of Davout's Third Corps on his right, and a perfectly timed counterattack.
Yeah, perfectly timed. Even
the
minutes
battle
count.
began around 7 a.m. as
7 a.m, man! Things begin early in the battlefields and in the military. I would like to sleep until 10 a.m, 9 a.m. If I would have to be on the battlefield 7 a.m, getting ready 6 or 5 to, you know, get everything in order, I wouldn't get my sleep. I wouldn't be good for this Napoleonic war stuff.
Austrian troops of General Kienmayer's advance guard clashed with French troops defending the village of Telnitz. In the face of overwhelming odds, the French fought stubbornly and bravely, but gradually they were forced back. But the Allies, instead of carrying out their great enveloping attack, did nothing. The morning mist and the late arrival of orders had led to confusion and delay, and it was another hour before the first 3 Allied columns were on the move. Soon, fierce fighting erupted around Sokolnitz village and castle. Marshal Davout's corps, which had just force-marched 70 miles in 2 days, now arrived to strengthen the French right wing.
70 miles in 2 days, oh my god, and then you have to fight. If you have walked that much, you know how difficult it is without any gear. These dudes had gear and they were force march, so they couldn't take rests if they wanted to, and probably couldn't eat normally or drink. Oh my god. It's like 100 plus kilometers in 2 days. That is... How are these people able to march that long and then go into the battle immediately? Impossible!
Around 9 a.m, his lead infantry brigade appeared suddenly through the mist and retook Telnitz,
like in Hollywood,
before being driven back in turn by Austrian hussars. 2 more of Davout's brigades reinforced French troops at Sokolnitz. As the mist began to clear, Napoleon saw that, as he'd hoped, the Allied left was moving off the Pratzen Heights, and he ordered Marshal Soult's 4th Corps to begin its attack. To the alarm of Allied commanders, 2 French infantry divisions, until now hidden by the mist, were suddenly seen advancing straight towards the Allied centre. General Kutuzov was forced to hurriedly organize a defense of the heights, using troops of 4 column. 2 hours of bloody fighting followed. Musket fire was so rapid and furious that both sides were soon low on ammunition and turned to the bayonet.
Oh boy. We're going back to the roots.
11 a.m. the French, with the advantage in training and discipline, had secured the heights and driven a deep wedge into the Allied position. To the north, a giant cavalry battle developed. While a Russian force from General Bagration's advance guard captured the village of Bosenitz before it was halted by cannon fire from the Santon Hill. A decisive charge by 6 regiments of French heavy cavalry finally drove...
Heavy cavalry, French heavy cavalry. If I hear the word heavy cavalry, I would think about winged hussars or Teutonic knights with their full armor, you know, heavy tanks going 50 miles an hour into the battle. But heavy cavalry at Napoleonic times, did they even have metal armor? What does it mean if they're heavy or light cavalry back then? Weapon difference? Or armor difference? Or support equipment difference? Equipment difference, what they carry?
Move back the Allies, allowing Marshal Lannes' 5 Corps to move forward and seize Blasowitz and Krug.
Damn, I love how detailed this is. I love it.
Grand Duke Constantine, commanding the Russian Imperial Guard, led forward this last Allied reserve in a desperate bid to reclaim the Pratzen Heights. A battalion of the French 4th Line Regiment was charged down by Russian Guard cavalry, losing its Eagle standard in bloody fighting.
The Eagle standard, as much as I know, comes from the Romans, and they lost it in Teutoburg Forest, where I think 6,000 to 10,000 Romans were just slaughtered and they lost the Eagle. They of course got it back later, but that's where the idea comes that you cannot lose your army emblems, I think. I might be wrong here, not a historian, so if you know the story better, just put it in the comments. We all read the comments, don't we?
Napoleon, who'd moved up to the heights, sent in his own Guard cavalry. In this grim melee between the elite horsemen of both armies, the French finally prevailed.
Ooh. Melee versus
Napoleon
melee.
had broken the Allied centre. Now, to close the trap on the Allied left wing, still locked in heavy fighting around Sokolnitz. Around 2 p.m, Napoleon ordered 4 divisions to swing south and cut off their retreat.
Oh hell, that's a
General
massacre.
Buxhowden, commanding the Allied left, only now saw the danger he was in. Attacked from 3 sides, the only escape was south. Many of his troops were forced to flee across frozen ponds. French artillery opened fire, trying to smash the ice with their cannonballs. About 200 men and dozens of horses drowned in the freezing water. But not the many thousands of Napoleon's propaganda.
Many thousands. Okay, 200, that's not that much actually. I would think they broke the ice and the entire army went to the depths. But no, 200.
The French Emperor had won a brilliant victory.
Yeah, that is genius.
His army had taken more than 10,000 prisoners and captured 45 enemy standards. Thousands of dead and wounded of all sides littered the battlefield. Many left untended.
Wait, what are we talking about? French dead, Allied dead. I thought we were talking about dead in tens of thousands. We're talking about only 1,200 dead for the French. That is nothing. That's a minor skirmish in Second or First World War. That's not even a skirmish. That's like a poop, a poop. But at these times, I guess this was a huge battle.
For days. The Battle of the Three Emperors, as it became known, was a crushing blow to the Third Coalition. As Russian forces retreated back to Russia, Francis I of Austria was forced to accept a humiliating settlement with France, agreeing to pay a 40 million franc indemnity and give up more territory in exchange for peace. But meanwhile, news had reached Napoleon of a disastrous Franco-Spanish defeat at sea off Cape Trafalgar. British Admiral Lord Nelson, at the cost of his own life, had masterminded a victory so complete that it ensured British naval dominance, not just for the rest of the war, but for the next 100 years.
Crazy. For 100 years, Battle of Trafalgar. We need to react to that, man. I want to know what happens. I've heard about the story that Nelson, right, the genius admiral, he got wounded and he still led the battle or something, and then he died and they won the battle and Britain controlled the seas for the next century. We need to watch it. I need to know.
Britain, master of the sea. Napoleon, unbeatable on land. The whale and the elephant, neither able to challenge the other in its own domain. When William Pitt received news of Napoleon's victory at Austerlitz, he's supposed to have said, "Roll up that map of Europe. It will not be wanted these 10 years."
Well said.
A month later, Pitt was dead. But his warning that Europe faced another 10 years of war and upheaval was to prove prophetic.
Prussia smashed.
In
Jena.
December 1805, at the Battle of Austerlitz, Napoleon Bonaparte, Emperor of the French, won a crushing victory against the joint forces of Austria and Russia. Napoleon now dominated Europe, able to hand out spoils as he saw fit. In February 1806, he sent an army led by Marshal Massena to overthrow the King of Naples, who had dared to side with his enemies, and gave his throne to his own brother Joseph instead. Another brother, Louis, was made King of Holland. His German allies, Bavaria and Württemberg, were elevated to the status.
What's up with the small states of Germany? Look at this, it's so splintered. So many tiny German states. You need to unify that country, my friend.
Now the Prussians learned that Napoleon had secretly offered to give Hanover back to Britain in exchange for peace. Frederick's advisors now persuaded him that war was the only honourable course. But Prussia then made a basic strategic blunder, sending an ultimatum to Napoleon without consulting its new allies in the Fourth Coalition. Their forces were too far away to help Prussia.
Everybody wants to take on Napoleon on their own. They want the glory of being able to beat him on their own. But that's their downfall. If they would all link up and have this 1 million men grand army, they would defeat Napoleon, I think.
Who would now face Napoleon's Grande Armée with just the small state of Saxony for support. In 1806, the Prussian army had a fearsome reputation that dated back 50 years to the reign of Frederick the Great. Napoleon, a student of history, regarded it with respect.
Yeah, Prussia was like the military powerhouse of Europe at the 17th century, wasn't it? 1740s, 50s. They were the most reformed army and they were unbeatable and something like that. That's all I know.
But Prussia's army had been allowed to rest on its laurels.
Yeah.
Its generals were old, its staff work hindered by bureaucracy and personal rivalries, its movements ponderous and predictable. Prussian soldiers, however, could be relied on to fight with pride and determination, while Prussian cavalry was regarded as amongst the best in Europe. In October 1806, Napoleon invaded Saxony with an army of 166,000 men and 256 guns. Advancing in 3 columns, the French crossed the mountain forests of the Thüringer Wald, along roads carefully reconnoitred by scouts and spies. Napoleon intended to threaten Leipzig and force a decisive battle with the Prussian army, which he believed was near Gera.
Yeah, Napoleon is all about decisive battles, but what I see about warfare, I'm not a tactician, but what I think is, yeah, you can have short-lived victories when doing decisive battles, but if you want to win the war, you got to be effective in the long run. Like, you cannot only force decisive battles, but you got to outlast the enemy. It's about attrition, it's about who has the more manpower in the long run. Well, we have played Hearts of Iron 4, you know, you can do decisive battles, yes, but if you can't man your garrisons or if you run out of manpower, they will revolt and you will lose all ground.
The Prussians were, in fact, further west, concentrating near Erfurt, on the west bank of the river Saale. Its commander, the Duke of Brunswick, had hoped to threaten the flank of Napoleon's advance. But wrong-footed by the speed of the French, he now ordered a retreat north to find a new defensive line. On the 10th of October at Saalfeld, Marshal Lannes' 5th Corps clashed with a Prussian advance guard, commanded by Prince Louis Frederick, the king's cousin. The Prussian force was routed, and Prince Louis himself killed in combat with a quartermaster of the French 10th Hussars. 3 days later, Lannes made contact with a large Prussian force near Jena and sent news to Napoleon. The French Emperor, believing he'd found the main Prussian army, rapidly issued orders for his corps to concentrate for battle at Jena. Bernadotte's 1st Corps and Davout's 3rd Corps were to cross the Saale and fall on the Prussian flank from the north. But Napoleon was wrong.
Oh, Napoleon was wrong? When does that happen? Not until the 6th coalition? 5th or 6th?
Lannes faced a 35,000-strong Prussian rearguard, commanded by General Hohenlohe. The main Prussian army, 52,000 men under the Duke of Brunswick, was further north, moving straight into the path of Davout's 3rd Corps.
Oh, boy. A disaster waiting to happen.
The Battle of Jena began at 6:30 a.m. on the 14th of October, in thick fog.
Again with the fog.
Marshal Lannes' 5th Corps already had a toehold on the plateau west of the Tartu River. His first task was to drive back the Prussians and win room for the rest of the French army, arriving by the hour, to deploy. His infantry led the way, and fierce fighting broke out for the villages of Cospeda, Krosewitz and Lützeroda. Meanwhile, Augereau's 7th Corps advanced through a ravine, emerging onto the plateau on Lannes' left flank, while Soult's 4th Corps climbed steep tracks to form on his right. Napoleon joined Lannes in the center of the battle.
It's crazy how Napoleon himself is in the battlefield. A stray bullet could kill him. He's the emperor, for Christ's sake. But he's with his men. And I think that's what makes him so popular with his army also. He's not gonna shy away from the battlefield. He is there with his men. He speaks to them, he fights with them, he takes the risk of getting killed with them. That's a good leader.
Field, organizing a 25-gun battery to support the attack on Vierzehnheiligen. The village was won, but then lost to a determined Prussian counterattack. On the right, around 10 a.m., Soult's infantry secured Clausewitz, but was counterattacked on its right flank near Rödigen. A decisive charge by Soult's light cavalry drove off the Prussians,
light cavalry
routing
this time.
their infantry and capturing 2 enemy colours.
Hey!
As 6th Corps began to arrive on the plateau, its fearless but impetuous commander, Marshal Ney, ignored orders and dived into the fighting around Vierzehnheiligen, becoming briefly cut off by a Prussian counterattack and having to be rescued by Guard cavalry. General Hohenlohe was expecting the arrival of 15,000 more troops under General ROHJE at any moment. Until then, he remained largely inactive, shoring up his line and ordering limited counterattacks. But he had run out of time. Napoleon had begun the day with just 25,000 men. By 12:30, a steady stream of reinforcements had brought his strength up to 96,000.
Oh boy, you dead boy.
As the Emperor rode past the Imperial Guard, one young soldier, eager to be sent into action, called out, "Forward!" Napoleon stopped and demanded to know who had spoken, then rebuked the soldier as a beardless youth who ought not to offer advice until he too had commanded in 30 battles. But the moment had arrived.
What an ego, man. A man is so motivated. He's like, oh, let's go to battle. If your army is so motivated, you're lucky. Most armies in the world who are fighting, they have motivation problems, attrition problems. If your dude is like, let's go forward, yeah, you should be happy about this. Not like, oh, boo, you stupid. You don't know nothing. I think Napoleon is a big-headed ego man who doesn't like to take advice, like Hitler and like Stalin.
Although the Guard, to its frustration, remained in reserve, the other French corps were ordered forward in a general attack. The Prussian army began to give ground. At first it kept its discipline, but then disintegrated into a general rout.
Oh hell.
Murat's cavalry were launched in pursuit, riding down and sabering hundreds of fleeing Prussians.
That's the
General
massacre again.
ROHJE's 2 divisions finally arrived, at the worst possible moment. They briefly held up 5th Corps' advance, but were soon outflanked, broken up by cannon fire, and charged down by French cuirassiers.
Oof.
Meanwhile, 12 miles to the north, near Auerstadt, Marshal Davout was marching southwest, expecting to fall on the Prussian left wing at Jena. Instead, he encountered the Duke of Brunswick's main Prussian army,
Oh boy!
heading north to take up new positions.
Let's go!
Davout's 3rd Corps, 27,000 men and 48 guns, was about to face odds of 2 to 1, while Bernadotte's 1st Corps, which had orders to support Davout, was nowhere to be seen. Davout, nicknamed the Iron Marshal, showed no signs of alarm. He formed his 1st Division into a defensive line centered on the village of Hassenhausen. His infantry forming...
How did city fighting happen back then? Like, if you are on the field, we know 2 columns of men face each other and they shoot and everybody dies. But in the city, you can take cover, right? You don't have to be stupid and standing up with your musket. How did it happen? You could take cover by the standards of that time's discipline, right? You didn't have to stay up front in the line. In the city, I would say they would take cover and shoot and hide and shoot and hide, right? That makes sure you don't die that quickly. I'm no strategian, but even I know that. I don't know why they back then concentrated the men like that. If I had a 100,000 man army, I would fight the enemy using guerrilla tactics with those 100,000 men and grind the enemy down. That's what I would do.
Squares to repel a series of cavalry charges by General Blücher's advance guard. His other 2 infantry divisions arrived to strengthen the line, standing firm in the face of repeated Prussian attacks. But Prussian movements were slow and poorly coordinated, nor did they use their numerical advantage to try and outflank Davout.
Why? Why? You have a bigger army, you can do anything with it. If you don't use it, it's like 300 Spartans versus the Persians. Like, the 300 can hold up a huge army.
At a crucial moment, the Duke of Brunswick was shot through the eyes, a wound that proved fatal.
Yeah, duh.
Frederick William himself took command.
Obviously.
Several Prussian units remained uncommitted, but the king, convinced he faced the main French army under Napoleon, dithered. Around 12:15, Marshal Davout counterattacked. The Prussian army turned and fled.
How? What is going on?
Davout had won a stunning victory against the odds.
Incredible.
But at a heavy price. His corps suffered 25% casualties.
25% usually is 1/3 casualties is enough to make a corps unfit for battle. 25% is very close to that. So yeah, that's a very heavy toll.
Man in 4 killed or wounded, while inflicting twice as many losses on the Prussians.
Ooh, 115 guns captured. Ooh, everlasting claims, huh?
When news reached Napoleon that Marshal Davout had engaged and defeated the main Prussian army, he reacted first with disbelief, then heaped praise upon the Iron Marshal, later awarding him the title Duke of Auerstadt. Marshal Bernadotte, in contrast, was nearly court-martialed for failing to support Davout.
Yeah.
Napoleon's army began a masterful pursuit of the beaten Prussians, giving them no time to regather their strength. 2 weeks after the twin battles of Jena-Auerstadt, Napoleon's troops, led by Davout's heroic Third Corps, entered Berlin. The next day, General Hohenlohe surrendered at Prenzlau. At Lübeck, General Blücher and 20,000 Prussians were driven out of the city in heavy fighting and forced to surrender, while 25,000 Prussians besieged at Magdeburg surrendered to Marshal Ney. Prussia's army had been devastated by a Napoleonic blitzkrieg.
Yeah, that is the word they did. They used heavy cavalry, light cavalry, and very fast movement. That's truly a blitzkrieg. If they had tanks, maybe the Nazi war machine based their strategies, blitzkrieg upon Napoleonic victories. Because I remember watching a documentary about Hitler. He thought he's the greatest general and army marshal of the world, except for Napoleon. So Hitler thought only Napoleon is above him in skill. So I think Blitzkrieg might have drawn some, intelligence from this. I don't know, I'm getting so riled up about this. Whew, it's cool.
In just 33 days, Prussia had lost 20,000 dead, 140,000 prisoners, 800 guns, and 250 standards.
140,000 prisoners. Napoleon, what are you gonna do with these? Are they gonna build something? Are they gonna go to prisoner camps, work camps? What do you do with so many prisoners? What the fuck?
It was a humiliation that proud Prussians like General Blücher would neither forget nor forgive.
800 guns, man. Oof.
Unlike Saxony, King Frederick William refused to make peace with Napoleon. He continued to hold out in East Prussia, trusting in the approaching Russian armies to rescue his kingdom. Despite another glorious victory for Napoleon and the Grande Armée, the war was not won yet.
Russia defeated Friedland 1807. Oh, it gets better and better.
1 week before Christmas 1806, French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte arrived in the Polish city of Warsaw, then part of Prussia. A year had passed since his great victory over the Austrians and Russians at Austerlitz, and 2 months since he'd hammered the Prussians at Jena. But Russia still had powerful forces in the field, the most important of which was the Russian First Army, commanded by General Bennigsen. Napoleon would not be master of Europe until it was defeated, and Russia and Prussia forced to make peace. But that winter, Napoleon's first attempt to trap Bennigsen near Pultusk got bogged down in thick Polish mud. The Russians withdrew to Białystok. The French army, half-starved and frozen, was ordered into winter quarters. While in Warsaw, Napoleon began a famous affair with a young Polish noblewoman, Marie Walewska. In the late 18th century, the once mighty Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth had been swallowed up by its neighbours, Russia, Austria, and Prussia, in a series of annexations known as partitions. Until in 1795, a third and final partition wiped Poland off the map. Now,
I am all for Polish sovereignty. I cannot say this. Where Estonia and Poland share this history, we both were wiped off the map and we re-emerged when the Tsarist Russia went down. 1918, Estonia got its independence, and I think Poland at the same time, you came back to the map. Well, Estonia was never on the map before that, but we emerged on 1918. But Poland was a very long and powerful country. Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was the biggest country in European plane at some point. So yeah, I'm all for they having their own country and independence. And that is being questioned right now by Belarus
Polish patriots looked to Napoleon as their savior, praying
Yes.
that his victories against their occupiers would lead to the rebirth of a Polish state.
Yes, please. I'm all
Rehi
for it.
Walewska became Napoleon's mistress in order to further this cause. Ordinary French soldiers, however, had little love for Poland. It was impoverished, freezing, and they missed home. Desertion rates soared. There were even 100 cases of suicide.
Oh God.
Marshal Ney, commanding 6th Corps, sent patrols towards Heilsberg, looking for better quarters. What they found were Russian and Prussian soldiers on the move.
Oh.
They'd stumbled into a surprise winter attack by Bennigsen.
Who would do a winter attack? It's horrible. Winter, right now in Estonia also we have minus 10 Celsius. That is, I think minus 10 Fahrenheit, it's the same. I think it meets somewhere there. And it's really nasty and cold. And you don't want to fight in these conditions.
Napoleon quickly laid a trap for the Russian army, ordering Ney and Bernadotte to retreat and lure Bennigsen west, while he led the rest of the army north to fall on his flank and rear.
Genius!
But the Russians captured a French courier carrying the Emperor's orders to Marshal Bernadotte. Bennigsen, now warned of the trap, ordered a retreat, fighting a series of rearguard skirmishes against the pursuing French. But he refused to give up the city of Königsberg without a fight, and turned to give battle at Eylau. The Battle of Eylau, fought over 2 days, was one of the most brutal of the Napoleonic Wars, fought in freezing conditions, with neither side backing down. Marshal Augereau's 7th Corps, advancing into the face of a snowstorm, lost its way and was cut to pieces by Russian cannon fire. 5 French Eagles were lost.
Everything goes south. Goes south. When you go north, when you go in fight in the snow and blizzards, you will lose. Estonians, Latvians, Lithuanians, Russians, Polish, we are used to these conditions. Don't come from the south and expect to win here.
Napoleon's army was only saved by a devastating massed cavalry charge by 10,000 horsemen,
10,000?
led by the fearless Marshal Murat, and remembered as one of the great cavalry charges in history. At Eylau, for the first time as emperor, Napoleon failed to win a clear victory on the battlefield. He and the Russians covered up the true scale of their losses, but both sides are estimated to have lost a third of their armies in the carnage. After the horrors of Eylau, both armies sought time to rest and recover. Meanwhile, the newly formed French...
After the horrors of Eylau, man, you have no idea what's coming in World War I. You haven't seen nothing yet.
10th Corps under Marshal Lefebvre besieged Danzig, held by 13,000 Prussians under General Kalkruth. The city came under heavy French bombardment and infantry assault. After 8 weeks...
In Hearts of Iron 4, if you play as Germany, I love to play as Germany, you have the national focus Danzig or war, and that's the... Yeah, that's for you to justify going war against Poland if they don't give you Danzig, which they don't. And we take Danzig, and then we take Poland.
With no prospect of reinforcement, the Prussian garrison surrendered on the 27th of May. Napoleon's northern sea flank was now secure against any possible Russian landing. The French Emperor now commanded an army 190,000 strong, against just 115,000 Russian and Prussian troops.
Russian-Prussian.
But it was Bennigsen who moved first, launching a surprise attack against Ney's 6th Corps on the 5th of June. Ney conducted a brilliant fighting withdrawal and escaped. Bennigsen, having lost the element of surprise, and with Napoleon advancing, retreated once more. 4 days later at Heilsberg, the French lost 10,000 men in a botched assault against Russian defences. But the Russians continued their retreat the next day. Napoleon thought Bennigsen would head north to Königsberg, but instead he retreated northeast, keeping to the east bank of the Aller River.
Hey, am I getting some Bennigsen surprise vibes here? Is Bennigsen the first general who can actually surprise Napoleon and is not that predictable? I'm getting some genius vibes here.
So when Napoleon's army marched north, it was Marshal Lannes' reserve corps on his right flank that next encountered the Russian army, near the small town of Friedland.
Friedland. That's a very cool line. Ride your horse into the ground if you have to, but tell the emperor we're fighting the entire Russian army. Oh, that sounds cool.
In the late afternoon of the 13th of June, Russian cavalry scouts informed General Bennigsen that they'd found a single French corps at Friedland. Bennigsen decided he had time to cross the Aller River and smash this isolated corps before the rest of the French army could arrive to save it. And he ordered his army to begin crossing the river. Marshal Lannes, commanding 16,000 men and facing 46,000 Russians, sent an urgent message to Napoleon that he was under attack from the main Russian army. Then he fought a skillful delaying action, hiding the weakness of his force behind a large screen of skirmishers, while gradually yielding ground to the enemy. Lannes was still holding off the Russians as darkness fell.
How do you do that? Even to retreat orderly is difficult in battle. If you bigger Russian force and they still manage to retreat orderly and keep them at bay for the entire day. I'm amazed.
That night, Russian engineers built 3 pontoon bridges at Friedland to speed the movement of troops over the river. But Bennigsen was taking a huge risk. If this turned into a major battle, his army would have to fight with its back to the river, and the steep banks of the Mill Stream dividing its left wing from its right. Bennigsen had also badly underestimated the speed at which Napoleon's Grande Armée would react.
They always do that.
The first French reinforcements arrived that night.
Already.
The Emperor himself wasn't far behind.
It is a horrible place. Look, the entire French army is coming and they have a river to their back. The Russians are dead, man.
By dawn on the 14th of June, about 40,000 Russians had crossed to the west bank of the Aller River. Bennigsen ordered an attack on the village of Heinrichsdorf to turn the French left flank. But French cavalry reinforcements, led by General Grouchy, intercepted the Russians. In more than an hour of charge and countercharge, the French horsemen finally drove the Russians back. Marshal Mortier's 8th Corps now arrived to reinforce the French centre. In Sortlack Wood, General Oudinot's elite Grenadier Division fought stubbornly against Prince Bagration's left wing, but was outnumbered by the Russians and gradually pushed back. Around noon on a sweltering day, Napoleon himself arrived. He was soon followed by First Corps, commanded by General Victor, standing in for the wounded Marshal Bernadotte, as well as Ney's 6th Corps and the Imperial Guard under Marshal Bessières.
Oh, the Russians are done, man. They're so done.
The date, the 14th of June, held special significance for Napoleon. It was the 7th anniversary of his great victory over the Austrians at Marengo. A good omen, he declared. The battle then entered a lull, as Napoleon assessed the situation, saw Bennigsen's dangerous position, and issued orders for an attack to take advantage of it. Bennigsen, meanwhile, who was tormented by ill health throughout the day, saw that he now faced the full might of Napoleon's army, and issued orders for a retreat.
Oh, hell no. Oh, no.
But before Bennigsen's retreat could get underway, at 5:30 p.m, 3 salvos from the French guns signalled the start of Napoleon's attack. It was led by Ney's 6th Corps on the right wing, who first cleared Bagration's infantry from Sortlack Wood. But as Ney's troops left the cover of the trees, they came under heavy fire from Russian cannon across the river. As the French attack faltered, Prince Bagration rallied his men and launched a camp.
Look at this here. What is this entire corps trapped in this salient here? What the... and there's another salient here. I am seeing the horrible way it goes here.
Cavalry counterattack. Ney's corps retreated. But now General Victor's 1st Corps came up on his left. Its artillery commander, General Senarmont, advanced with 30 guns and blasted the Russians at point-blank range with case shot.
Oh, case shots! Oh my god! It's grape shot, basically. They put these musket balls in a bag and they put it in the cannon and it shoots like a shotgun, boom, like that. And it shreds infantry. It cuts men in half by the hundreds in a row, like that. It's crazy. Oh, if they use grape shot in history, it's really incredible because it takes down so much infantry and the cannons have to be really close. They have to be like 100 meters. And for cannons to get that close to enemy's infantry, it's really damn dangerous. So this is a very rare thing to be used effectively. Grape shot.
Hundreds of Russians were mown down within minutes.
Yeah,
under this onslaught, Bagration's men began to waver and then retreat. Around 7 p.m, the Russian Imperial Guard launched a desperate counterattack to try to halt the French advance on Friedland. But they were outnumbered and outgunned. As exploding shells began to start fires in Friedland, the French centre and left wing joined the attack.
Oh, all-out attack!
With its only escape route under threat, the entire Russian army began a panicked retreat towards the river. But Friedland's houses and bridges were now ablaze. The town became a deadly trap for the Russians. Many were drowned trying to cross the river, others killed or captured. North of Friedland, some units were able to escape across a ford or along the river bank. But there was no disguising the Russians' terrible defeat. The Battle of Friedland was one of the most decisive victories of Napoleon's career. At the cost of 10,000 casualties, he had inflicted twice as many losses on the Russians. About 20,000 men, killed, wounded or taken prisoner. 40% of Bennigsen's army.
Alright, my friends, we're gonna leave it here. There's another part coming up of this. I will be uploading this the next video. So stay tuned, subscribe for it, become a patron if you like my videos, please. That's the fastest way to support this channel. And as always, until my next video, stay cool, my friends, and bye bye.